Knave of Hearts presents Before the Tone. Episode 6. The Watcher and the Watched.
Hey, you've reached Daria. I'm not at the phone right now, so leave a message after the tone and I'll get back to you when I can. Hey Daria, how's it going? Sorry. I should stop sassing you about not picking up my calls. I won't, but I should. I did appreciate your text earlier. I didn't see it until just now because I was working. I'd hoped to catch you this time, but I suppose 'twas not meant to be. I'll reply, obviously. Try to wrangle you into scheduling an actual phone call because texting is exhausting. I know, I'm an embarrassment to introverts everywhere, what with my phone calls and socialization. But in the meantime, you asked me to keep you updated, so I shall. I am sticking to my plan, not walking home when it's late, letting someone know where I am, all that good stuff. I, talked to Pascal about the situation, and she's been lovely. We haven't known each other that long, but we've been spending a lot of time together, and she's just a really good person to be around. I trust her. I also told Danny about it, and they said they would keep an eye out for me, and that they can even stay late a bit into my shift if I need them to. They've been really helpful. I don't get to hang out with them particularly often, since we only see each other in the time between shifts, or if I come in early, but we get along. I haven't mentioned anything to Saphira or any of the others at this point, as I don't know them that well, other than watching them sometimes on the CCTV. But if I see the stalker at my work, I will definitely let them know. This is all very stressful, as you might imagine. I have seen him around more. He hasn't been in my class again, thankfully. But I've seen him walking on the campus, and in that cafe, and on the street when I'm on my way home, and he is paying more attention to me. Like, it's no longer being played as just coincidental that I'm seeing the same guy around. He's clearly looking in my direction and watching me. But it could still all be in my head. I don't have any evidence, any actual evidence that he means harm, or that I'm actually being stalked, but I mean, I know I am. I don't want evidence, but I feel a little bit like I'm going crazy, or that I'm being too paranoid or something. I'm just scared and tired. But the world spins on, am I right? It's like the freaking Atlas logo. The world crumbles a bit, but is still spinning. It's hard to hold it up sometimes. I'll be alright. You don't have to worry too much. Unless it'll make you pick up the phone once in a while, in which case worry all you like. I'm glad you listened to the voicemails. It was really nice to hear from you, even if it was just a short text. I miss you. Good night, Daria. Leave a message after the tone, and I'll get back to you when I can. Hey Daria, I'm just going to give you a short voicemail since I have to head to work in a couple minutes, but I thought you'd like an update. I am currently home. Pascal's here too, so you might hear some interjections in the background this evening.
Hi, Daria.
Case in point. We've been chilling and doing some work here. I am almost done with my short story due next class. It is meant to be inspired by a household object, which leaves a lot of room for interpretation. Mine, for example, is following a knife through varying contexts, from cooking to opening packages to murder. I get to play around with the different tones that come with all those settings, which are really fun to explore.
And only vaguely concerning.
Shut up. I like getting to do all the sensory description too. The smell of the cooking, the slice of the packaging, the
sounds of your victims screaming.
I'm having fun with it. Meanwhile, Pascal is taking it in a totally different angle, turning it into a whole drama about an inheritance, which is also really interesting and plotty. Don't tell her I said this, but she's a really good writer.
You're too kind. Are you going to send Daria your story when it's done? I bet she'd enjoy it.
Yeah, maybe. I can email it to her when I'm done. I'm not really sure she'll read it, though.
Do I need to threaten her? She should really be answering your calls, and she should be honored to read your story.
I don't think you need to threaten her. I can do that just fine. Hear that? This is now a threat. I will send you my story, and you shall be obligated to read through all of its murdery goodness.
Yeah!
Seriously, though, I will send you the story. You can read it if you so desire. It'd make your dear sister very happy. Oh shit, what time is it?
Time to head out?
Yes. You still good with driving?
Yep. Can you pass me my cane?
Yep, here you go. Talk to you soon, Daria. Love you.
Leave a message after the tone, and I'll get back to you when I can.
Hey, Daria. I am just getting home from work. I know I already called today, but I wanted to tell you about Atlas tonight because it was a time. Plus, it is technically after midnight, so I am technically not calling twice in one day. Not that it matters particularly. So, the reason I had to leave a little early today was that I had a performance review with Eve. Fairly informal, but she's still my boss, so yeah. I stopped by the watchtower before my meeting and spoke to Danny for a bit. I was pretty nervous about the review, so I wanted some advice. They laughed and said that I didn't need to be too worried about it since it would probably be more of a check-in than a formal review. Said she likes to keep an eye on my situation. I was not quite sure what they meant by that, but they just waved it off and explained that I was one of her unorthodox hires. I mean, they were not wrong, considering I interviewed for a totally different position, as you may recall. So I guess it makes sense that she'd want to check in more if she's worried that I'm not really suited for the job. The one thing is, though, the way Danny phrased it made me think of that comment the secretary, whose name I still don't know, by the way, made about my kind or something like that. It's probably nothing, but I still find it a little disquieting. The one other bit of advice Danny gave me was more of a warning about how Eve can sometimes be a bit weird with questions. And, as I'm gonna get to in a minute, that was accurate, to say the least. Before I had to leave to make my meeting, I glanced at the CCTV footage, and now, this isn't weird, per se, but it jumped out at me. There was some guy sitting in the waiting area, the same place I'd waited for my initial interview at Atlas. He looked nervous, twiddling his thumbs and running his hand through increasingly messy hair. Again, not inherently weird, but I'd been watching the footage out of the corner of my eye while I spoke to Danny, and I could have sworn he wasn't there before. I'd not noticed him walk into that area and sit down. He was just there one moment. I pointed him out to Danny, who had been paying attention, and they said they'd seen him walk over and he was on schedule as an interviewee. I nodded and didn't dispute that since I hadn't been watching closely. But when I made it to Eve's office, I did not see him in the waiting area, and when I asked Eve about him offhandedly, she said I was her only meeting today. I guess he could have conceivably had a meeting with someone else and was just in the wrong waiting area. It is pretty easy to get turned around in here. Oh yeah, and the hallway's still funky fresh down here. The little chute between the waiting area and Eve's office is one of the worst bits. I've gotten semi-used to the trek up to the CCTV room, but it still does not do much good against the elements. I've gotten used to the feeling of walking when everything feels incorrect and wonky depth perception and all that, but the weirdness itself, the instability, hasn't gone away, and I doubt it will. It's an inconvenience, but no one else seems to notice it, and I am kind of beyond feeling freaked out over it. So yes, you have been briefed on the prelude and the journey, so let us get on to the meat. My performance review with Eve. It was fine, I guess. It was weird. So, I go to her office, she offers me a seat, I sit down, we make pleasantries, etc. I hadn't really seen Eve much since my first few days working at Atlas, and I hadn't been in her office since my initial interview. Since then, maybe I just didn't notice before, she got a new clock. One that ticks audibly every second. It is very noticeable, at least to me. I hate clocks that tick audibly so much, you know this. You would think, you would think that it would be easy to tune out after a few minutes, but it was not. It felt like it was slightly off, slightly irregular, like the ticks were not marking even seconds, but ones that were slightly longer or shorter. But it was close enough that I almost couldn't tell. I couldn't put my finger on what was off about it until after the meeting was done. It reminded me of when you can't tell if something is moving, or if it's a still image with your eyes playing tricks on you, so you stare at one spot, trying to see if anything changes in relation to it. And yeah, maybe the clock is messed up, or maybe it was an auditory illusion. Either way, it put me off during my meeting, even though I tried not to show it. At the start of the meeting, Eve pulled out a binder and opened it to a certain page, and never broke eye contact with me. Never looked down at her files, just eye contact the whole time. It's funny, I still can't quite picture her face properly. I was looking at her eyes for most of the review, but I couldn't see what color they were. Presumably I could see it, I'm not sure. Anyway, she started off by saying that I had applied for a position as a CCTV operator, which I hadn't. I thought she was joking, because the way she said it made it clear she didn't believe it. So I responded with, well, this is the job you gave me, but something in her tone and neutral response to my comment felt very unnerving and not very humorous. She asked how I've been finding the job, any issues, that kind of thing. And I told her that it was going well, I'd gotten used to the equipment, was not having any problems learning the ropes. Then she asked me if I had noticed anything unusual. I said I hadn't. But instead of moving forward, she just let the silence hang in the air, expectant. Eventually I elaborated and told her some little things I noticed, even if they weren't that unusual. I mentioned how sometimes I mess up following people on the monitors, or they glitch, making people seem to skip bits of space. I think I mentioned that to you once or twice, but it has definitely happened more than that. This is also when I brought up the person outside her office that wasn't there, then wasn't again. She finally responded after that, saying I was her last meeting of the day, and she seemed satisfied. The rest of the meeting was more of the same. Overall, did I enjoy the meeting? No. Was it kind of unsettling through and through? Yeah. But it could be worse. Remember the restaurant? My standards are low, to say the least. And she offered me a coffee on my way out. She has a machine in her office, very fancy. I spilled some of it on a chair outside her office, though, immediately after I left. Pro tip, don't drink coffee and walk through fucked up hallways at the same time. It doesn't go well for the office furniture. At least all the furniture is black and brown, so the coffee kind of blends in. Alright, well, I think I've rambled on enough for the evening, middle of the night, whatever. I hope you enjoyed. Good night, Daria.
This episode has featured the voices of Anna Stein as Mack, Emma Johanna Puranen as Daria, Gwen Davies as Pascal, and Rebecca Hansson in the credits. It was written by Anna Stein, with script editing by Sarahlily Stein. Sound design and dialogue editing were done by Katharine Seaton. The theme music was composed by Duck Edwards, featuring score by Arhynn Descy. It was directed by Anna Stein. Special thanks to our Indiegogo backers, Hannah Wright, Shams Bentemisek, and our Monarch and Spacetime tier backers, Jacob Stein and Steven Stein, as well as to everyone who backed the campaign. For updates and ominous messaging, follow us on Twitter and Tumblr at Knave of Hearts AD. Disclaimer: past performance is not indicative of present reality.
What would you do if one day you came home to find your hometown destroyed by fire? What if people told you that it isn't the first time something like this has happened? That more towns have disappeared like this, but somehow no one has tried doing anything about it? When Rena comes home to the ruins of her town and finds a strange artifact in the debris, she can't shake the feeling that something isn't adding up, that it couldn't just have been an accident that caused this tragedy. And so, she sets out to discover what actually happened, encountering other people on her journey that know that the authorities aren't telling them everything. But luckily, Rena isn't alone on her quest for the truth, because you can help her take the right path. The Heart Pyre is an interactive fantasy audio drama, where after each episode, listeners can vote for how the story should continue. Find the podcast on your favorite listening platform and follow it on social media to get the latest updates. Or go to theheartpyre.com to find transcripts, character art, a map of the kingdom, and other information.